I'm really glad they just told me that I can only broadcast for 8 hours, because that means I'll have to keep this very short as far as what I'm going to be doing. This is just a test of my live streaming capabilities, but I figured while I'm testing my live streaming capabilities, I may as well actually record an episode since I'm all by myself this week anyway. So I'm just finishing setting up my stuff here. I have my laptop right here, so if I accidentally glance to the side, that's what I'm doing. I have my camera right here. I have my microphone to capture my voice for the computer right here. I have my microphone to capture my voice for the podcast right here. I have my book, and I have paper notes, which is charming, I guess, in a very not charming way. I'm not actually going to be paying much attention to what's happening on the screen because it would be weird. I don't have an engineer. I don't have anyone working this thing. Can you see where I'm pointing? You can't. That's awesome, which means my hands aren't in view. I'm very bad at live broadcasting. I don't know anything about it, except what I've seen and taught myself. I do know, though, that you're not supposed to do this with your hands, because when you see this, it's very distracting. So my hands are firmly in my lap. I'm just going to be talking about the Berenstain Bears, which is what I do, and then stopping the recording and editing it into an episode. So if that's not what you tuned in for, that's your own deal, because this is Deep in Bear Country, a Berenstain Bearcast. This is my house. That's my formless void right back there. This is the creepy mirror that meets you when you come down the stairs. So if you're ever in my house, that's what you'll see when you come down the stairs, that mirror right there. This is my table of junk. And that's a couple of hats and helmets. And then a stack of Amelia Bedelia books behind me. So that's my house. All right, so what I'm going to be doing is just doing Deep in Bear Country. Again, this is a test. At the end of the day, I'm just hoping to get the episode in the can so that I can edit it for this Saturday. So here goes. All right. Okay. Are you ready to rock? I said, are you ready to rock? Are you ready to teen rock? Welcome back to Deep in Bear Country, a Berenstain Bearcast. I'm your host, Phil Gonzalez, and right off the bat, I'm going to warn you that today's episode is going to deal with some shockingly self-indulgent subjects, things that you might not be at all interested in hearing about, but which I am more than eager to And there's my cat. See? She gets very upset when I talk in a loud voice. So I'm going to start this over. This is what happens when I do shows by myself. What's up, Lily? Yeah, you're not a part of this. I know you're not a part of this. Why don't you jump up on the radiator there? Why don't you jump up on that radiator there? That's right. That's right. She's upset because she's not allowed in the kids' bedroom. All right, so I'm going to start this episode over again. Please. That's it. I'm just going to start the episode over again. Here we go. I'm not going to do the Are You Ready to Rock part. That's for a little thing I'm editing together for the beginning. So we're done with that. Are you settled? Great. Welcome back to Deep in Bear Country, a Berenstain Bearcast. I'm your host, Phil Gonzalez, and right off the bat, I'm going to warn you that today's episode is going to deal with some shockingly self-indulgent subject matter. Things you might not be at all interested in hearing about, but which I am more than eager to discuss with you at length. Things like the mall, and stonewashed jeans, and fictional music, and puns, and the consistency of naming conventions amongst the bear citizens of Bear Country. Why all these subjects? Well, it's because I am discussing a very packed book, a very strange book, but a very awesome book that I was actually very sad I don't have like 3 friends in here to talk about with me, because this book is brilliant. It is called The Berenstain Bears at the Teen Rock Cafe. Not the Berenstain Bears and Teen Rock Cafe, but at the Teen Rock Cafe. 1996, big chapter book. First of all, they don't go to the Teen Rock Cafe until near the end of the book, because the entire story is about the establishment of the Teen Rock Cafe. A Teen Rock Cafe that is, surprisingly enough to me, actually called the Teen Rock Cafe. Like, that's the actual name of the place. The Teen Rock Cafe is called the Teen Rock Cafe. I was assuming the title would be a little misleading and that it was going to be called, like, you know, the Jumpin' Bear Joint or something. I don't know what. I'm bad with names. But instead, they actually just call it the Teen Rock Cafe. Spoilers, they eventually establish a Teen Rock Cafe. It is just as silly as the title of the Berenstain Bears at the Teen Rock Cafe would suggest. And yeah, it's pretty much this. If you want to look, you get some excited cubs there on the cover. Like, they're singing and dancing. You have Cousin Fred, and you got Scuzz, and you've got Too Tall, and you've got brother and sister, and looks like Bunny Brown. It's hopping. And although you don't find out about this book or about the cafe until later on in the book, it is just as hopping. That's what's great about it. Okay, so the plot itself, one of the reasons I just found this book very amusing is the plot itself is actually concerns two individual stories that converge at about exactly the halfway point, and complement each other well enough in a way that a lot of the big chapter books plots don't tend to work. Like, they'll throw a couple of storylines into a big chapter book and kind of try to cram them together. But in this book, they actually do feed into one another well enough that the happenings in one story propel the happenings in the other story to a logical for Bear Country conclusion, and to a satisfying conclusion, going in directions that you weren't expecting it to, but that surprisingly do not involve kidnapping or murder. So that's a refreshing thing for Bear Country. All right, so first of all, the first major storyline in the book is the introduction of a new choir teacher to the Bear Country School. And this is a new thing for the books because we've never been given any indication that Bear Country School has a choir of any sort. There's rumors going around that one of the teachers is going to make an announcement. Teacher Bob is actually going to make an announcement. And Too Tall gets it into his head that Teacher Bob is going to announce his retirement or that he's quitting. And Queenie believes him and starts spreading the rumor. And so there's this huge assembly, and Teacher Bob gets up there, and he basically announces that Miss Acapella is leaving. Miss Acapella being the choir teacher, and that Ms. Arpeggio is taking her place. And right now, okay, so we have Miss Acapella and Ms. Arpeggio, and usually in Bear Country, the names of bears are bear-based. They are an indication of the bear lineage or the type of bear they are. We have a lot of Bruins and Grizzlies and Bears and Brunowitz and Browns and all, just variations on not necessarily just types of bears, but bear indicators, ursine indicators. And this is the first time I've been made aware of the fact that there are bears who are specifically named for their occupations. And this kind of feeds into what last week's episode was, which was just a discussion of race, but also the bear last names. Suddenly we have Miss Acapella and Ms. Arpeggio, which are two very specific musical terms who are musician bears. So Miss Arpeggio, it's Miss Acapella, Ms. Arpeggio. They're very specific about that. Miss Acapella has been their choir teacher for a long time. They all love her because she's an easy teacher. And Ms. Arpeggio shows up, and she is from the country Philharmonic. And she's intimidating. She is very serious. She's very stern looking. She dresses in all black. She performs a piece by, I believe the first piece she performs is by Franz Schubert. Is that correct? Let me look it up. I don't want to get it wrong. Yes, she plays Trout Quintet by Franz Schubert. And if you notice, I'm emphasizing the word bear because it's literally written Franz Schubert, which is funny because when you say it out loud, it just sounds like you're saying Schubert. But in any case, she blows everyone away. She's a great piano player. The kids are all intimidated. They don't want to go to choir the next day because they're afraid that she's going to be so good and so professional that they're not going to be able to live up to her expectations. So we have this nice little setup right here with Ms. Arpeggio. What I like about Ms. Arpeggio, though, is that she, right off the bat, she is one of the better rounded adult characters in Bear Country. When we finally get to her class, the kids are all nervous. Sister Bear is asked to sing. She screws up, and Ms. Arpeggio immediately softens, and she's like, you know what? I'm so sorry if you guys feel intimidated by me. I was so nervous to be performing for you yesterday that I got lost in my own little like reverie. And the kids are like, oh, wait, you get nervous too? And she's like, well, of course I am. I've never taught kids choir before, so I'm new to this. So I need you guys to help me out. And the kids were like, oh, an adult's asking us, Cubs, to help an adult. And it's a conversation between the adult and the children that is not just plot focused, like many of the plots in the books usually are. So we get just some nice little character moments between the teacher and the students, which of course pays off even further down the line in the stories. We'll see. But already, like I like Ms. Arpeggio. She's a really cool character. It goes a long way to establishing the respectful relationship that she has with the children, and it smooths over a lot of the Cubs' apprehensions, which is also something that we don't see adults in these books doing a lot of, which is making the Cubs feel comfortable. There is a mystery in this story, by the way, but it's not treated like the Bear Country mysteries are usually treated. It's a little more, I want to say, organic to the story. There's at no point do Brother and his friends doff their bear detective caps. They just work to solve this problem. So the other plot concerns Bear Country Mall, and it involves shoplifting epidemic that's going on at the mall, and how Too Tall and his gang are initially blamed for it, and then the other Cubs get roped in by association. One of the store managers assumes that because there's Cubs in the mall, it must be Cubs who are doing the thievery because he doesn't trust kids, and how he tries to get the police involved and he tries to get the security guards involved, and it becomes this whole mess where the Cubs end up almost getting banned from the mall. But what's really interesting about this chapter, it's chapter 4, and I'm just going to read to you a little bit from this. Now, bear in mind, this book is set in, or takes place, or was published in 1996. So it mentions that they're at the Bear Country Mall, brother and sister and their friends. And it says, there were several spots around town where the Cubs liked to hang out. Sometimes they went to the Burger Bear or Biff Bruin's pharmacy, but their favorite hangout these days was the mall. The Bear Country Mall was a huge building filled with stores and walkways. What the Cubs liked best about it was the freedom it gave them. They didn't have to stay put in a booth or squeeze into the narrow aisles of a single store. They could stroll up and down the wide walkways and go into any store they liked. And when they got tired of walking and spending their allowances, they could sit along the edge of the big fountain across from Jeans R Us and flip pennies into the water. It's funny because this book is 1996, and it gives you a lengthy explanation of what a mall is. Which, I mean, by 1996, I was in college at this point, and I was well out of, like, malls had been around for a long time, since, you know, the heyday of the mall in the early 80s, early to mid 80s. I was a child of malls, and that's something I'm going to ask you to indulge me in right now while I discuss a little bit about mall culture. This book is very much about mall culture, and I'm not sure when exactly that culture started falling apart or disappearing. I know that every year or so there used to be articles about the death of the American mall and how online shopping had made malls irrelevant. And even when I post about malls or mention the mall online, people usually pipe up with, like, malls? Who goes to malls anymore? I'm like, well, I go to the mall. Like, I do go to the mall every once in a while, and there's always a lot of people there. It gets very busy, and not just around the holidays. There's a lot of stores and malls, and it's a fairly convenient place to go. I mean, I live in Minnesota, which is the home of the Mall of America, which is just down the road from where I live. So if I go to the mall, I tend to either go to the one by work or to the Mall of America. And it's a pretty successful place. In fact, the malls in Minnesota are fairly successful from what I can tell. But I know that mall culture doesn't really exist as it used to. When I was a kid, when I was a teenager, the mall was a place that you went. It was a place to hang out and meet up with friends and go see a movie and grab something to eat. And you would spend hours in the mall. You'd be dropped off by your parents and just do what the Cubs do, which is just hang out in the mall. It was a safe place to be. You tended not to get in trouble unless you were there to make trouble. And look at me, I was not there to make trouble. I was there to spend time with friends. You could chill out. You could buy things. You could just be in a place. The mall was invented as a place to sort of replace the town square. The original idea was that we are going to enclose what used to be the open mall with stores and provide a place for communities to meet. And the stores were actually almost secondary to what they were supposed to be, which was a communal gathering place. And of course, you realize that communal gathering places don't pay for themselves, so they started squeezing in even more things to buy, and thus the birth of the mall kiosk. But the original idea was that it was supposed to be this new town square, and for a long time it was kind of treated as such. I grew up around several major malls that were a lot different than malls are now. They were less efficient. They were a little more meandering, a little more rambling. Places were a little junkier, maybe maybe not the word I'm looking for. But if you look at pictures of malls from like the late 70s, early to mid 80s, you get a sense of a whole lost world that doesn't exist anymore. And like Lost World, a lot of like somewhat threatening things, but you kind of felt like this was a place that you could call home as a kid. And I don't know, when I go to the malls now, I still see a lot of kids hanging out there. There's curfews that didn't exist when I was a child, but yeah, so I assume that the Cubs, they don't say really how they get there, but I assume that they either catch a bus or they walk to the mall. Bear Country is a relatively small place. Bear Town isn't huge, but the Cubs go there and they spend time there. And so, like I said, there's been a lot of shoplifting going on, particularly at Jeans R Us. And here we get another naming convention weirdness. As we had Miss R Acapella and the new Ms. Arpeggio, the manager of Jeans R Us is named Mr. Denham, not D-E-N-I-M, but Denham, D-E-N-H-A-M. But so it didn't occur to me until I said it out loud. I was like, oh, Mr. Denham, because he sells jeans. I guess it's supposed to be a place like the Gap. It's sort of a fashionable jeans store, but there's like displays in the front with like stand-up characters. What are they called? Mannequins wearing jeans. Jeans R Us. So the manager of Jeans R Us is convinced that the Cubs are stealing stuff from him because his inventory keeps disappearing. The inventory keeps disappearing from a lot of malls, a lot of the mall stores at the Bear Country Mall. And he's spying on the kids, and he calls Burley Biggs, who is the mall security guard, on them. And the Burley Biggs is harassing them a lot, which is something that happens to kids in public places. The manager can't prove that the kids did anything wrong, but he's going to keep his eye on them, and he's threatening to have them arrested, which is funny because Babs Bruno is there, and she's like, my father is the police chief. You're definitely not going to have me arrested. So we got these two plots running concurrently. We've got the introduction of Ms. Acapella or Ms. Arpeggio. We've got the thefts going on at the Bear Country Mall, and at first they seem relatively disconnected. But what happens is Too Tall and his gang are goofing off in the mall. They attract the attention of security, and they get themselves kicked out of the mall, essentially, or threatened with being kicked out, enough so that the Cubs don't feel comfortable hanging out at the mall anymore. They need a new place to hang out. Well, they mentioned this to Ms. Arpeggio, who's like, well, you guys can come hang out at my house if you want to. And they're like, all right, that's weird, but okay. And that's when they find out that Ms. Arpeggio isn't just a classical piano player. She's also a rock and roll pianist. She loves the music of, I want to get this right. She loves the music of Iron Honeybee, which I can only assume is a playoff of Iron Butterfly, which, okay. Their song is called Rockin' and Rollin'. There's also a song called Rock Around the Block. And here's where I want to start talking a little bit about fictional bands and fictional music in fiction. I want to talk about that. Making up a band and music, making up any form of art, actually. Fictional writers, fictional artists, fictional poets, fictional musicians, anything. Filmmakers, TV shows is nearly impossible. It's nearly impossible to capture the authenticity enough so that the reader or the viewer or the listener doesn't call it out. It just doesn't say like, this is wrong. This is not a real thing. This doesn't sound right. And it doesn't. There's a kiddie quality to this. It almost feels like these titles were come up with by writers who are not in their teens, by people who perhaps grew up in the 1970s and were used to music from that era. There's a reason that all the songs contain the word rockin' in them, because that's what rock and roll songs have, right? They talk about rockin', right? So I feel like if this is going to be way off the subject, but I feel like when I first read, I believe it was The Vampire Lestat, Anne Rice, in The Vampire Lestat, if you're not familiar with it, the Vampire Lestat becomes a rock and roll star in one of the most humiliatingly embarrassing plot points in the history of vampire fiction. The Vampire Lestat becomes a famous rock star, and they print the lyrics of his songs in the book, and the words are like, I am Lestat, I am a creepy vampire. It doesn't work. It does not sound anything like an actual song. And at that point, in this book about magical sad vampires, you're suddenly taken out of the reality of it by this obviously phony recording artist and these obviously phony lyrics. And I feel the same way about the Teen Rock Cafe. I wish they'd kept it a little more on the down low. Like, don't call out names and titles. Just keep it what it is. Just let us sort of imagine what's going on. But this thing, it's a minor nitpick. The long and short of it is the Cubs have a great time with Ms. Arpeggio. They sing a bunch of pop songs, and they mentioned to her that they've been essentially kicked out of the mall. And they get an idea that they need a new hangout. And Ms. Arpeggio suggests that they sort of model something off the Big Bear Cafe, which is, it's where the students at Big Bear University run their own cafe, she says. They sell drinks and snacks and play music. Sometimes they have poetry readings. And 2 or 3 nights a week, there's a floor show with all kinds of acts, bands, singers, comedians, even magicians. And the Cubs get it into their head that they're going to create their own cafe and call it the Teen Rock Cafe, and that'll be a place for all the Cubs to hang out. And they're like, where will we get a play? Where will we even do this? We're not business people, even though they've run a television station fairly successfully, if you remember from the past few episodes. So Bonnie Brown says, my uncle Squire Grizzlies owns the bank, and they've had to close a bunch of their branches because ATMs are so popular, which is, I guess, a thing that happens to banks. And then there's all these banks sitting empty, and maybe he'll donate a bank to us. And he does. Squire Grizzly not only donated the former bank to the Cubs, but even offered to put in a soda fountain, snack racks, tables, chairs, and sound and lighting equipment. The Music Cave donated a piano, 100 CDs, and enough rock posters to cover the walls. Grizzmaster Electronics donated a neon sign for the entrance. And Burgers and Berries donated a month's worth of snacks, soda pop, and milkshakes. These Cubs are making out like bandits. The store owners are donating all this stuff because it's getting the Cubs away from their stores, which is weird. In the mall, the mall stores are like, oh, thank God you're getting the kids away. These are kid-oriented businesses who are thrilled that the kids aren't going to be coming to the mall anymore. They're going to be going to a rival business across town, and they're like, great, here, have free product to sell. Go hog wild. Plus, a bank, an entire bank? My mind is blown at how generous everyone in Bear Country suddenly is. Now, at about the halfway point in this book, our 2 plots, so they've already started converging because the Cubs are kicked out of the mall, and that necessitates the establishment of this new enterprise. At this point, though, we get the strangest twist in the plot, and that is where Babs Bruno, is Babs Bruno? Let me just double check. Babs Bruno, yes. Babs Bruno is like, whoa. I just totally remembered something, but I can't remember what it was. But I saw something weird. I can't remember what it was. I can't remember what I need to remember, but it had something to do with something in the mall. And the Cubs are like, what are we going to do? If you can't remember what are we gonna? What do you think? And she's like, I think it has something to do with who's been stealing stuff at the mall. And they're like, well, remember what it is? And she's like, I can't remember what it is. And Ms. Arpeggio's like, I think you need to be hypnotized. So the Cubs go to Dr. Gert Grizzly and are like, can you hypnotize Babs Bruno so she can remember what she saw at the mall? And Gert Grizzly's like, I can't do that. I am incapable of doing that. But you know who can do it? And they're like, who? And she's all, oh, maybe the most famous psychiatrist in the world, Big Bear University's Dr. Sigmund Bruin can do it. I'll call him and make you guys an appointment. But then she's like, oh, you can't get the appointment for 6 months. Who else can hypnotize people? Oh, I know, Ralph Ripoff. And this is where plots from past books start coming into play, because all of a sudden, Dr. Gert Grizzly is like, I'll call Ralph. Remember that time that he helped me get money for the hospital? I bet he'll help out if he knows it's for a good cause. So she's using their past relationship that was established in one of the murder books, one of the books with the Freaky Funhouse, I think it was. The books where someone almost gets murdered. She uses that old relationship to get Ralph on their side. Ralph doesn't want to do it, but they promise to pay him. And so he's like, all right, but they're like, you have to, we'll let you do your act, make a little cash on the side if you will do some hypnosis on us. So he shows up with the Cubs, and he starts hypnotizing everyone. It gets really weird. The teens get hypnotized, sort of. Too Tall is hypnotized, but then you find out he was faking it just so he could threaten one of his buddies. Ferdy Factual gets hypnotized, but doesn't believe he was hypnotized. Sister gets hypnotized, and in hypnotizing Sister, he accidentally hypnotizes Babs Bruno, which is weird because I don't understand why they didn't just have him hypnotize Babs Bruno in the first place. She gets secondhand hypnosis, which I guess is a thing. So Babs Bruno gets secondhand hypnosis, and she remembers that she saw 2 old women at the Bear Country Mall who were suspicious. They were walking weird, and they may or may not, I can't remember if she knows this or not, have been smoking cigars. There was something weird about these old women. And so they call the police, and they're like, Police Chief Bruno, your daughter has these memories about these thieves. And so there's like a little bit of a stakeout at the Bear Country Mall. The Jeans R Us guy is like, I've been robbed again, but no Cubs have been coming in. Like, there's no Cubs here. I don't know who could have robbed me. The only people in this store are these 2 old ladies. So the police tear out to Bear Country Mall. I'm skipping a lot of stuff in this book here because honestly, the hypnosis section takes like 5 chapters. It includes this wonderful picture of Sister Bear with a ball in her mouth, which is just the strangest thing I've ever seen. She thought she was a dog because that's the way hypnosis works. So Babs remembers these bears. So there's this picture of the 2 bears. They're like old women bears in bonnets with evil looks on their faces. The store owner calls the police. An all points alert goes out. The police show up. The 2 old ladies are leaving the mall. And stuff gets real. Stuff gets real right here because the 2 old ladies are trying to leave. The police show up for questioning. Chief Bruno's like, can I have a look at your glasses? And the old ladies are like, sure. And they give him the glasses, and he realizes they're fake glasses. He smells smoke on them. He's like, have you been smoking cigars? Just then, Officer Marguerite's squad car pulled up behind the ladies. Chief Bruno pulled his pistol from its holster and pointed it at them. So now we have Police Chief Bruno leveling his pistol at 2 old, as far as he knows, it's just 2 old ladies. He motioned the Cubs to stand in a row to one side. Officer Marguerite moved to the other side and placed her hand on the handle of her pistol. I thought I recognized that face, said the chief to the lady whose glasses he was holding. Both of you take off those ridiculous bonnets. And it is the Bog Brothers. And what I love is there's a picture of the reveal of the Bog Brothers, which is, it's just a couple of bears. Because when you take the accoutrements off of any of the bears in these books, they're just bears. Like, they all look kind of the same. They just look like angry bears. So you see Police Chief Bruno and Officer Marguerite leading them away. There's this huge thing at City Hall where like the mayor gives medals to everyone for catching jeans thieves, which I guess is a thing that happens. Like, I'm not really sure like how serious gene thievery is to the police, but there's like medals given out to Ralph Ripoff for helping find him, and the kids get medals and gift certificates to Genes R Us. There's a big party at the Teen Rock Cafe. It gets packed with Cubs. Ralph Ripoff and Ms. Arpeggio are the only adults at the Teen Rock Cafe. There's a wonderful little spread with Ralph and Ms. Arpeggio hanging out with the teens. Too Tall and his gang are rocking and rolling on the stage because they're the entertainment. Ralph does his hypnosis act, and there's this weird subplot been going on with Ferdy Factual where he doesn't believe he was hypnotized. So they videotape him having been hypnotized during this performance, and then they play it at him, and he's like, all right, I guess I was hypnotized. And that's literally all that happens. Like, he's like, I don't see what's so funny about my performance. I think it's rather impressive. Because he's Ferdy Factual, and he's infuriating. So Too Tall announces that he's going to do a final number. He's going to do Rockin' and Rollin' by Iron Honeybee, and who joins them on stage but Ms. Arpeggio. She sits at the keys, rocks and rolls with Too Tall and his gang, playing the songs, and it says the Happy Cubs rocked till they dropped. And there's Ms. Arpeggio, my favorite adult character in the book so far, rocking and rolling with Too Tall and his gang. I didn't cover a lot of, like, there's a lot of like little bits and pieces in here as to like, you find it like Harry McGill's in the book. They don't call him Wheels anymore, which I'm kind of happy about. Harry McGill's in the book, and he has a confrontation with one of the security guards at the mall who accuses him of hiding stolen merchandise in his wheelchair, which is kind of gross. You find out that Too Tall and the gang's band actually has a name, which I don't have written down. It's not that interesting. The Marauders or something. I don't know. But also that like Barry Bruin is going to be the comedian. He's going to do his stand-up, in which they describe as him standing up until everyone gets tired of him and tells him to sit back down, which I thought was pretty amusing because we all hate Barry Bruin because he's not funny. And then one more thing I wanted to point out. While they're in the mall, there's the incredible moment where the manager of Genes R Us and the security guard hide behind a cardboard cutout of a bear wearing a pair of jeans. And there's two things about this. First of all, the bear that they're hiding behind is called Barry Manilow. Beary. Barry Manilow. You can tell it's Barry Manilow because it says he is. It doesn't look any different. He just looks like he's just a bear. That's Barry Manilow. And he's wearing a pair of stone-washed jeans. If I can just have a little indulgence, stone-washed jeans were this thing where they would wash jeans with stones of a sort, and they would be faded and patchy and supposed to look rugged. They were a terrible thing that happened in America in the 90s, and I was guilty of wearing stone-washed jeans, most likely with a button fly, probably with a woven belt. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to apologize for anyone who may have seen me with my woven belt and button fly, stone-washed, most likely Levi's 501 jeans. They were probably small-waisted, but then ballooned out a little bit below the waist, probably baggy, covered a lot more real estate than they may have needed to. So for those of you who were ever around me when I was wearing my stone-washed Levi 501 button fly jeans with a woven belt, I'm terribly sorry. I also had a pair of Z Cavariccis in 8th grade. I'm not proud of the fact, but it is a fact about me. So that's it. That's the Berenstain Bears at the Teen Rock Cafe. Two plots converge nicely. You get some good character development with Ms. Arpeggio. I really like Ms. Arpeggio. We met some characters at the mall. We were expanded a little bit upon like what the kids do for fun, and it answered a question that was pointed out to me online. This does, in a way, prove that the kids are teens. I mean, I don't think you can legally call your cafe the Teen Rock Cafe if you're not teens. There's rock there. There must be teens. So maybe preteens, but that means they're at least 11. Also, they're running this business by themselves. I want to point that out again, and are the only ones allowed in the Teen Rock Cafe, so there's no adults on site, except for Ralph and Ms. Arpeggio, but that was only for the opening. Ralph again, love a story with Ralph. He's one of my favorite characters. No mama or papa in this book. They are absent. This is the Cubs. This is them solving their own problems. There's a mystery going on. No bear detectives within sight. They're not setting out to solve a mystery. Weird hypnotism angle. You get to see Ralph being a huckster again. Someone accuses him of being a thief at some point, and he's like, I'm a rip-off artist. I'm not a thief. Like, I don't steal things. I rip people off. There's a difference. Like, it's that levels of, or I should do, like, levels of chicanery that Ralph rip-off. He won't be part of this. He'll only be part of this. So, that's it. Teen Rock Cafe. I highly recommend it. Here's the weird thing, though. It's not available as an ebook. It's one of the random books that they decided not to put out as an ebook. As of this recording, it's only available used. I had to buy it used online. But if you're in the market for Berenstain Bears chapter books, I recommend picking up Teen Rock Cafe. There's more to it. You find out that like Ludwig von Beethoven is a thing, but that he also wrote Ode to Joy. Like, not any other weird variation on that name. Ode to Joy by Ludwig von Beethoven. So, just a little filling in the gaps there in our bear world history. So pick it up, go online, get a copy from a second-hand dealer. They're there and they're cheap. So Berenstain Bears at the Teen Rock Cafe, highly recommended. Now it's time to shift gears because we have another Patreon question. This question comes to us from Patreon user Michael, who asks, it's the same guy who did the last question. And I'm going to address this in bits and pieces because it's a multi-tiered question, multi-tiered. He says, so way back, early in the series, when you were discussing alternate realities, timelines, etc., you made a comment, look to the sconces, meaning the sconces on the outside of the bear's front door. It's been ages since you've mentioned them, and definitely not since you've started with the chapter books. So, do the sconces indicate which reality / timeline / dreamland we're in now? So I'm going to start off with that. Because he also goes on, for that matter, what artwork, if any, is part of the chapter books? We'll discuss artwork in the chapter books in a sec. I want to talk about these sconces. I haven't talked sconces in a while. For listeners who started out from the beginning, you may remember what he's pointing out, which is that the sconces on the outside of the Bear family treehouse indicated whether or not we were in bear world proper or within the imaginary bear world of Brother and or Papa Bear. It's not a cut and dry situation, but the way you can generally tell which world is which is if you look at it's the bear's main door, the front door. There's two lanterns on the outside of that door, and depending on the level of detail with which they are drawn, whether they're more ornate or very simple line drawings when up close, if they're the more ornate sconces, that is Bear World proper. If they're the simpler, less defined, or if they aren't there, or if they're just candles, that's the Bear Country Dreamland, unless it's a flashback to when they first moved into the house, at which point they were still candles. If I recall correctly, there was our main world. Then there was Brother Bear's Dreamland, which is where a lot of the beginner books were. I'm talking Inside, Outside, Upside Down. I'm talking the Berenstain Bears B book. I'm talking Bears in the Night. Any of the books that took place in a weird nebulous reality where things weren't character driven and were kind of not what they seemed and didn't make a whole lot of like logical sense. That was Brother Bear's dream world. And that's where we saw the progress, and wow, I haven't thought about this in a while, of Brother Bear taking control of his own destiny, of learning to become a leader, of learning to be a more responsible young bear. And once we started hitting the first time books, we lost a lot of the Dreamland stuff because we didn't need it anymore. The Berensteins themselves are moving away from that style of book, moving into more story-oriented ones. And since then, the only time we've dealt with the Dreamland was recently we had Blaze a Trail just a few episodes ago, which I did with Mr. Brad Mariska, where we determined that book also took place in the weird Berenstain Bears Dreamland. So the reason I haven't said Look to the Sconces in a while is because we haven't actually had to deal with whether or not we're in a fictitious or a real Berenstain Bear world. Now, this leads into the next part of your question, which is what artwork, if any, is part of the chapter books? I've never actually seen one in person. When you talk about the other non-chapter books, there's so much discussion of the artwork. And so is there really no or minimal artwork with the chapter books? Now, the artwork for the Big Chapter and the Bear Scouts chapter books was done by Mike Berenstain and Sorted Freelancers. Mike did a chunk of the early Big Chapter books and then a lot of the Bear Scouts books. But he did the layouts and like the rough designs for the layouts in the books. So even if he didn't do the actual artwork that you see on the printed page, it's a lot of his say and it's his creative mind putting these pages together. I don't know how much Stan had to do with it, how much Jan had to do with it, but there's a lot of Mike. So I don't tend to talk as much about the artwork. Every once in a while, I think I've mentioned it, but so I'm going to use this opportunity, use this space to talk a little bit about the artwork in these chapter books. The artwork in the Big Chapter books, it sort of evolves over time, and I think it depends on who's doing it, how much time they had to put it out. But you get some, and if you go to the Facebook page, actually, the Deep in Bear Country Facebook page, you can see some of the artwork. Every once in a while, I'll scan some in, or I'll get some from online that I find particularly intriguing or amusing. There's some great artwork in these books. It's a little more comic booky or illustratory. It's not colorful at all because these are black and white pictures. But I showed a couple in this live broadcast, but no, there are pictures in every chapter on every few pages at least. Some of them have word bubbles just to sort of illustrate an actual moment. I'm gonna put this one up here. This is like Ms. Arpeggio singing with the Cubs. Really dynamic stuff. They have, I could be completely off base, but they have Mike's attention to detail. Mike has a focus on details that Stan and Jan, I won't say they didn't have, but it's definitely through his eye. It's someone who loves machinery and nature and just studied art in a different way than his parents did. Mike is an extremely talented artist. He lays things out differently than Stan and Jan ever did. So you get a better look into the guy who's going to be doing all the books in the future. I love a lot of the illustrations in the Big Chapter books. I think these are kind of the forgotten Berenstain Bear pictures. These are the Berenstain Bear illustrations that just got left behind, like the dust of history. And there are literally hundreds of them because there are over 50 of these chapter books, and there are many illustrations per chapter book. I would say that, and if you buy them online, if you go to Kobo, if you go to Amazon, if you go to wherever you buy ebooks and get them, the ebooks preserve all of the original illustrations. Sometimes the layout's a little wonky because in some of the books, the illustrations were designed to sort of frame some of the words so that they can stand. When it's translated to ebooks, sometimes it stands out in a weird way, but no. Go online. If you buy online, pick up a book or two and they're not expensive. Or if it's not available as an ebook, buy it used and get a look at some of these illustrations. They're not all works of art, but then neither was everything that Stan and Jan did. Not everything was suitable for framing, but there's some great stuff, some intriguing stuff, some hilarious stuff. Mike is really good at drawing disdain in a bear's face. He draws the characters in a way that or I should say, he and the freelancers draw the characters in ways that Stan and Jan never did. The lines are bolder. They're a little cleaner. But there's little fiddly details in some of the pictures. So, and since these are the big chapter books, the bears make a lot angrier faces because there's more murder and kidnapping in these books. So, no, not only is there no or minimal artwork in the chapter books, there is lots and elaborate artwork in the chapter book. It's just not colored, and it just doesn't get the I think the kudos it deserves. I would love to go back to the archives and just look through the chapter book illustrations, because there's good ones. I would like a poster. Some of these I would put in have as a print on my wall. There's some really good ones here. So yes, I do love the illustrations. As far as like timelines go, I think the big chapter books exist in an alternate timeline from like the first time readers, mostly because of the bears' personalities, their ages, the way they interact with each other. But then also remember, the big chapter books and the Bear Scout chapter books also exist, in my opinion, in different timelines. So we're looking at a lot of fractured timelines here. That's just my opinion, but I'm sticking by it. Also, going back to the treehouse and the sconces, I haven't been talking a lot about them because the big chapter books, you don't see the treehouse very much, if at all. Mama and Papa are frequently sidelined. If you remember, at the Teen Rock Cafe, the Mama and Papa never appeared at all, and they frequently don't appear. If they do, they pop up for a chapter or two, and then we only get interior shots. There's not as many establishing shots in the chapter books. So we get a lot of insides of restaurants and stores and schools and clubhouses, but not exterior shots of the treehouse. I think because maybe they just drawn them enough, and we know what the treehouse looks like. And the chapter books are pulling us away from domestic storylines and expanding on Bear Country and Bear Town and Bear World and Big Bear City as a whole. So I appreciate that they're pulling away from that, but no treehouse, no sconces, no reminders of the old days. But we'll get back to it. I know I keep promising that we're getting back to the first-time readers. I am so years behind on them right now. I've got to dive back in. It's difficult. I'm kind of on a roll with the big chapter books. So don't worry. I will get back to them, and there will be discussions about lessons to learn and people to see. So thank you so much for joining me this week. I really like the Berenstain Bears of the Teen Rock Cafe. I was excited to talk about it. It's a fun book. It's crazy, and it takes place at the mall, and I love the mall, and I love talking about the mall. If I could, I would do a whole 2 episodes on this book and just have guests come on and talk about the mall. So if you want to talk about the mall, go to Deep in Bear Country's Facebook page and talk about the mall. Post your favorite mall memories. I don't know. I think it's fun. Do you have any photos of yourself when you were a kid in the 80s, like I was, and at the mall? Do you like to have pictures of yourselves when you were the Cubs age, hanging out and being fashionable at the mall? Were you ever kicked out of a mall? Did you have a lot of run-ins with mall security? What did you do at the mall? Did you go to Aladdin's Castle? Babbage's, perhaps? I went to Babbage's a lot. Go to Deep in Bear Country's Facebook page. Tell me about your mall experiences. Do it. By the way, we have a Facebook page. www.facebook.com/Deep in Bear Country. You can go there. You can visit us on Twitter at BStainBearcast. You can go to Patreon if you're not already on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Deep in Bear Country and throw some money my way. I would really appreciate it. I'm still testing the waters at Patreon and trying different things. So in the future, there might be some stuff coming up that I'll only make available on Patreon initially before I release it to the public. I'm a mess, like, in my head, so I don't always have things organized as well as I wish they did. But we got some fun stuff coming up, some more chapter books, things like that. So visit Patreon, visit Twitter, go to BerenstainBearcast.wordpress.com. That's my blog. And let me know if you like the show. And I know I haven't asked this in a while, but go to iTunes if you could and leave a review of the show on iTunes if you like the show. Give me a rating and review, partially because it helps boost my signal, but also because I like reading the reviews that people leave. I like knowing what people think about the show. Not in the moment, but when they've had time to kind of formulate an opinion. So do that, and I would greatly appreciate it. Otherwise, if you saw this online when it first aired on live streaming, thank you, or not. If you didn't, I mean, yes, thank you, obviously. But like, if you didn't, then I guess you're just listening to it. This was a weird experiment. I just did this off the cuff. I didn't even have any warning. I just thought I'd give it a shot. So this is my live stream. I'm also recording it, so I'll be releasing this as an actual episode this week. And otherwise, you know where to find me. So I'll see everyone next week deep in bear country. And I'm going to press stop on my recorder. That went about 20 minutes longer than I was expecting it to. I don't think I had any viewers, but it was worth the experiment. So thanks, everyone. And this is me turning this off. I'm looking down here at my thing. Goodbye.